Good morning, everybody. I'm Achille Salvagni. I'm an architect and a designer. I am Italian, but I work worldwide, so I have this privilege. My activity is basically split into three main areas. The activities are as a proper architect and interior designer, which deal mostly with important residential projects and hotel projects. The main core of the practice in Rome is also devoted to yacht design. And the recent one, but not the less important, probably the one that is getting more international recognition, is the furniture limited edition collectible design. So that's almost what I handle every day.
A very busy man indeed.
Thank you. Yeah, yes.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here and spend some time with you. And I'm going to go ahead and start from right in. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is there an object or a space from your past that you deeply miss? Like something you lost or that no longer exists but still holds power over you?
Wow. You mean a physical object, or you mean?
Yes.
Well, I'm very fascinated by tape measure. I think it's a way for me to handle the reality in a technical way, and helps me to test my own capability to measure elements. And if you think that this kind of tool belongs to the ancient Egypt, so they were the inventor of the tape measure. And during all these centuries, it has always been a tool that helps beautiful mind or technicians to prove that the analysis and the dimension of the project they were handling were properly. I think this is quite astonishing. We have a lot of ancient tools that we still use in our daily activity, that are connected to a long legacy of history and of experience made thousands of years ago. And that's a simple tool that makes me remind how we still behave the same way after ages and ages. That makes me feel part of the legacy.
I want to go a little bit deeper on the subject because this emotional weight of objects that you just described, this legacy, are we simply projecting our own memories onto them or do they hold something deeper?
No, they definitely hold something deeper. I hate to think about myself as a man of the future. At the same time, I don't belong to the present. And at the same time, I cannot get rid of the past. So all these objects that have a long last history in the history of human being are just wires that keeps you on a track. So there's no value in looking at the future without knowing very well the past. And the moment that I define something during the present, I immediately become past. So to be a person of your time, you need to look at the future, not denying the past and what happened before. So it's all about a long wire, and you work on this wire, keeping the roots of the back and looking at the front.
Do you do well in some of your previous work? What I mean by that, has something that you've done before that later you wish you had it done perhaps differently, where the passage of time change your perception?
Well, the passage of time definitely changes my perception. The more I know, the better I see the future. The less I know, and the worse my orientation is towards any kind of situation. So my capability to face a project, face a problem, face a new challenge is based on my experience. And the experience is grounded on the knowledge. So the more my knowledge helps me to orientate myself, the better will be the result. I mean, every student base his own capability to face an exam on his amount of knowledge. How much time do you study? Of course, we cannot sum in a specific activity. It's more likely the long lasting passing time of your life that layers after layers sedimentate a quantity of information that are your vocabulary to understand what the new poem will be like.
That's an interesting idea as well, because you're saying the concept of learning new things and experience, but a lot of the times that comes with challenges, comes with being able to manage a career of many years. And how often do you find yourself stepping outside your comfort zone?
I always step outside my comfort zone because I prove myself that being outside the comfort zone is the only way to raise the level of accomplishment. There's no way to be inside your comfort zone without not just making a story that has been told in the past. So if we all want to tell something new, we need to go get out from the comfort zone. And the comfort zone is not just knowing what to do and understanding what will be the next step, is also trying to set the bar higher in order to use old elements of analysis and old elements of fragmentation of the problem, at any time giving an answer that sets a little bit higher and that goes beyond the boundary that everyone is expecting to receive. So anytime I face a problem with a client, with a collector, with a friend, with a component of my family, the mindset asks me to do something a little bit beyond the expectation, and that's coming out your comfort zone.
Which expectation are we talking about? The client expectation, your own expectation, the industry expectations? How are you measuring that?
Well, my own expectation is always set very high because I am dealing with very, demanding clients. At a certain level, clients are extremely demanding, and you cannot expect that your mindset is meeting their expectation. So the first rule that I apply on myself is I try to set my expectation the highest possible, not to try to say delude the expectation of the client. Because when you reach certain social levels, it's proven that your capability to handle certain things it's beyond the average. So I am constantly dealing with beyond average interfaces, and that's what sets my expectation higher and higher. And what I try to accomplish anytime is to meet what they are expecting from me, trying to set the bar a little bit higher anytime.
With the hope to you can
Of course,
achieve it.
that's something we all hope. The client is hoping to receive something from me, and I'm hoping to give something a little bit unique.
You have worked with some incredible materials and one of the highest level of craftsmanship in the world. But do you ever find beauty in things that are broken, aged, or even incomplete?
The beauty is, to me, in the message and in the process itself. Beauty is a question of harmony and not a question of final result. And the harmony can be a series of passage that raise a level of accomplishment, but sometimes the path that you walk through is not the correct one. But that doesn't mean I am surrounded my studio in Rome of objects that never went on air because failing some little aspects or having some little technical problems. I don't see any ugliness in those processes. In fact, for me, are the real how to say way to go through the process of beauty. And beauty is not just an aesthetical balance, but it's also a way to achieve something in a good way. And often, we're human beings, we make mistakes, and the mistakes create the step for the next level. So the bigger is the mistake, and the higher is the next step, because of course you capitalize the mistake into something that cannot happen the next level.
Yeah, one thing I can think about is Japanese philosophy embraces imperfection, and Wabi-Sabi is a perfect example of that. But then I think of Italian design has often sought perfection in harmony.
Mm.
So for you, where do you stand on this spectrum?
Well, of course, coming from Rome, I am surrounded by beauty, heritage, history, and those are the grounded elements that made my brain to be educated. Also, my university training has always been based by this whole historical monuments and historical attempts to achieve the highest level possible of artisans and craftsmanship. Now, based on that, where do I stand? I stand that I hardly believe in harmony and beauty, and I think beauty will be the only way that will save us from any kind of disruption in any field, from politics to economy, from social life to fashion, wherever. Beauty is the only way to transmit a level of interior balance that makes the human being more solid and more respective of the others, because beauty is coming from nature. Nature is not perfection, is harmony. So where do I stand? I stand trying to achieve as much as possible a theme of harmony. Harmony is not made in a perfect way, but the whole system together creating a dialogue to create a composition that makes me feel beautiful inside, not just watching a beautiful object, but just being surrounded by elements that create my own soul in a state of calm, serenity, and tranquility. That is what me belongs to beauty.
Have you ever designed something so beautiful that you secretly didn't want to let it go?
No, I'm not so. The ego that I have has certain limits, and no, no. But sometimes the easiest is the gesture, and the highest is the level of accomplishment that I feel in my own, receiving the message from the object that I designed. So sometimes the complication doesn't really help into obtaining this level of exquisite elegance and sophistication that belongs to the very simple gesture.
Talking about ego, I want to kind of touch base about the idea of collecting because you work with a lot of collectors and you're a collector yourself. Um, how, what do you think about collecting really is about? It's about love, it's about power, or a fear of mortality.
I think the last, feel mortality. I think collecting is a way to feel alive, and is a way to surround yourself from objects that in some way it creates a sort of shelter from your own fragility. So that's why the older I get and the less I need. That's something I was discussing with some um, person yesterday. This sense of absence helps me to face in front of the essence of the human being in a much more integrate way. So I think the younger you are, and the more you want to be surrounded by physical objects that protect you, that establish your legacy, that establish how successful you are, or simply what are your passions. The more I get evolved, the more I know, the more I understand how those elements are limited also in terms of quality, because my uh, demand of quality increase, and my analysis of what I try to group around myself sometimes make me judge those things in a different way. So when I am 25, I can judge a piece of art as astonishing. When I am 35, I could judge it in a average way. When I probably am 50, 55, I could say, oh, this is not even a piece of art. Or, because of course you evolve, you grow your own vision. And so I basically think it's much more a way to protect yourself from the attack of society, of external elements. And this kind of fence of shelter is a sort of cradle where you feel comfortable. It's a sort of creating a comfort zone.
I love that description. That really makes a lot of sense. And I think people is going to be able to connect with that quite a bit. But I want to kind of go back to the point of changing your concept of idea. As you mentioned before, at 25, 35, 55, how things will change. Is there an object or space that completely change your understanding of desire?
You mean if I have a reference that sorry, I missed your.
Yeah, if there was ever an object or space that completely changed your understanding of wanting something, of desired, of really being able to own something.
Well, I was listening. I'm a great passionate of blues music, and I was listening to a song by a group called a supergroup back in the 70s called the Cream. It was a song called White Room, and I was like projecting myself in this white room scheme, which is the pureness, the absolute pureness, and the most minimal essential space that you could aim to. And I was like projecting into this white room a sort of canvas where everything can happen. Basically, you can see through, you can be protected. You can project whatever vision you want, or you could be completely isolated. And coming back to what we were saying before, in this specific case, less is more, and creates this sense of, re-understanding and re-analyzing again over and over how decoration and design can sometimes diverge from its originally ambition, and instead of creating an environment that could help you to grow into a comfort zone, or into an environment that helps you to grow your own visions, can be a real limit. And that's what I this song made me clear, that the more I have an essential aesthetic that try to define uh, minimal rules with a very strong relation, and the better is for my own soul to live with, and to understand what I can do to improve, or what I can do to try to accomplish what I'm dealing with.
Hmm. Do you think that minimalism is misunderstood? What I mean by that, what it's about? It's about emptiness, or
No,
it's
it's
about
it's
presence.
about it's about pureness. Minimalism, it's sometimes can be extremely poor. Maximalism could be too decorated. So the minimalism, conceptual minimalism that I'm talking about, is more likely connected to the pureness of the gesture, to the elegance of the gesture. So you were referring to some Japanese experiences. Um, I read a book some times ago that I always keep in my mind, which is The Art of Artistry. And The Art of
Mm.
Artistry is a book that tells how a student can experience himself with the art of artistry, replicating the same gesture for 1,000 times, and any times getting a little slice more than the previous one. That's not a simple gesture, but it's a very elegant gesture. So that elegance is the minimalism approach that I'm aiming to. It's not being simple, being plain, being poor, being colorless, but being elegant.
Hmm. How do you design with absence? What I mean by that, what so how do you so that what isn't there is just as important that what it is. Does it make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. So I design objects. My objects lives in different environments. When I create them, I see them in a specific location with a specific background, and I envision how they could live in a different environment. Of course, if I design a cabinet or a lighting feature or um, a box, whatever. It's my projection to envision how this object could live in your own space. And I don't know which space is going to. Sometimes I know the client. Some other times I create into my own mind something that you decide will be your own object and you will take into your own space. So the absence around varies substantially based on where the object is. If we think about the Mona Lisa today is under, a sort of a glazed box protected with guards in a vast, massive room in the middle of an emptiness. Now, we read it for the quality of the painting itself, but the surrounding influence substantially the reading of the painting. So if we think that that painting possibly originally was set in a very, very little room full of frescoes, and this painting was on the side of, of a corner of a room, in a completely different, and possibly in a dialogue with an external environment that was mutually dialoguing with the painting itself. You can see that the emptiness around the object itself anytime gives to the object a different value.
Yeah. Different experience too for
Yeah,
those who are engaging with as well.
yeah.
Hmm. Do you believe objects or spaces or a piece of art, for example, has a soul, has an aura, something beyond their physical form?
Of course, they have. They have an incredible aura towards, first of all, the aesthetic that they own, they represent themselves, and also if that object has a value for the person who wanted to get that object. Because I can say that a T-shirt doesn't represent any aura, but if it's a T-shirt that made me win the Olympic Games, has a completely different message that T-shirt. So it depends from the story behind the piece, and it's one aura, and another aura is what the piece shout themselves or irradiate itself from its own character without knowing what's behind. So it's like art. If you observe a contemporary piece of art without knowing what's behind, you see something. If someone else explained to you what was the original message of the artist, the message changes completely.
Hmm. So if you were going to see this idea that like a person that has encountered a lot of difficulties and problems and overcame all of that, a lot of experience, they kind of build an aura about themselves, a presence about themselves. So you're saying a lot of times the objects will have the same journey. The more the object has been exposed or been part of someone's legacy and history, the aura of the object increases as well.
Of course, they increases because they it's like think about a city. A city is made of layers of history, and any new history deny the former one, basing the new essence on the old one. So it's layers after layers that creates a new message, completely new message that apparently completely erase the past, but in fact base its new essence on the past experience. So it's the same. The more the time pass over on an object, the more the object circulates, the more the objects uh, encapsulate heritage, messages, or even losing its own original identity, it changes and evolutes. If we think about Charles Darwin, that said, it won't survive the strongest or the most intelligent, but the
Yes.
one who is capable to adapt. Now, an object adapts itself to a new life, any new season, and any new person who belongs to. I can use a vintage car to put it in a museum. You can use it for, gathering with other vintage car. Someone else can use it for the everyday car, and it's still a car that has 70 years old, and it's used in different ways. So according to the different usage that belongs to the need of the owner, the objects has a different gain and release a different message.
I want to talk a little bit more about the perspective of a human interacting with an object like that. For example, do you feel like, do I need to be in a certain mindset to be able to appreciate or even feel this aura, this soul from the object? Because if I'm not synced in or in the same, synergy with that space or that object, I'm not going to be able to fully appreciate the aura of it. Do you feel it's something more related to that, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Let's put this way. You have two different way to read an object. One is what the object tells to you in a very gut feeling way. So it's in a very immediate uh, interface with the object. And there is a second layer, which is much deeper, which is knowing exactly what's behind that object, what were the rules uh, that drove the designer to create those specific object and not something slightly different, which is the same way we approach art. And sometimes we are misled because we think that classical objects are very basically clear to us, and we feel in a sort of comfort zone reading that object, while contemporary object could be read as more complicated and more, hidden messages behind. But it's just a question of layers. Because if you think that when Caravaggio painted his masterpieces in the church, the poor people that watched those paintings didn't understand the hell of what Caravaggio wanted to tell, and didn't even understand why he put some fruits at the center of the stage rather than a human being, or why did they create that dramatic shadow light over the characters rather than using the other standard, more comfort approach to aesthetic. So anytime we see something, it's a question of layer of experience. The more we know, the more comfortable we feel, the less we are interconnected with the object. The more the object represents something new, a newness to us, and the more we feel to understand what's beyond that object. But it's just a question of being inside or outside our comfort zone. And what today for us is an extremely comfortable zone, 1,000 years ago was not at all. So it's
Yeah.
just a question of knowing where we are.
That reminds me of a story I'm going to share with you about myself. I was visiting, I think it was Art Basel, and for the first time, I saw a Liu Fan painting, who's a Korean artist. I
Yeah.
never seen it before. I wasn't really aware of him. And I had never had an emotion connection with the piece. I lost my breath. I couldn't explain why. I haven't had anything since then either, but really resonated with me in terms of going back what you're saying to the gut feeling. I couldn't explain why I gravitate towards, and it has been if you ask me today what's my favorite piece, it's still that one because what it meant to me in that time and place. But the interesting thing, I wasn't the only one. I was with my wife and a few other friends, and everybody really gravitate towards that one specific piece. And that just remind me something that you just talking about. Have you ever experienced something like this before? That you walk in a place or saw something that just kind of took the breath out of you?
Yeah, well, when you were talking, I was reminded to myself my first experience on an art fair, and I
Mhm.
was it was my first real interaction with a piece of art that potentially I would have loved to own or to buy, and I hadn't the means to do it. But again, I was driven by it was an artist called Vanessa Beecroft,
Mm.
which used to be based in LA. He's an Italian born artist, but used to work in LA for a long period. And she was working with the body, is the language of the body. And among these thousands of paintings, important artists or whatever, the only photo that attracted my eye was that photo. And
Yeah.
coming back to you, it's something that it's an aura that the piece itself has, despite any knowledge behind. And the message that she wanted to tell to me is completely opposite from what I read, because she was anorexic. She was talking about the body problems towards society. I was completely misleading the message, but my message was strongest than her in relation with the piece of art. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, it was quite a special moment for sure. Achille, the thing is, these days it's almost impossible to talk about any subject in the creative field without bringing up AI. So I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about it? And are you mostly optimistic, pessimistic? What's your point of view?
I'm optimistic by nature. I always see the half glass uh, not full and not empty. This is an attitude that I cannot change. In this specific matter, I see that AI can, of course, replace some human being activity, but we always need a director behind. We need someone to address the right information, to address the right way to obtain. And also, don't forget, when I ask to ChatGPT something and I'm not satisfied, I'm pushing him or it. I don't know how to define the essence of the tool itself into a different level. And why? Because I know exactly that the information that I received are not enough, or sometimes I'm surprised by the quantity of information that I receive. So in any case, there is a interaction, a strong interaction between the human being and the tool and the machine. And we cannot think that this is going to disrupt our sensibility, because there is no artificial intelligence capable to feel. And that's the only big difference, is the feeling. So when in the revolution, industrial revolution of the 19th century, people were thinking we won't work anymore. That's not true. We are working in a different way. We are, testing our body, not taking weight on our shoulders, but being awake for hours while before we went to bed at 6 o'clock in the evening, and we push our, human capability into other different direction. So it's like I see it as a liquid. Anytime you create a stop, the liquid goes in a different direction and fill another hole. So it's more likely this vision that I have about artificial intelligence. I don't think they will ever replace men. They will replace some activities, and we will
Yeah.
find some others to make artificial intelligence to be more efficient towards our existence.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of that and as well humanity because our idea of intelligence is very narrow right now, right? But there are multiple levels of intelligence. When I'm thinking about creativity, I think about intuition, I'm thinking about gut feelings, and I think about maybe beyond elements that we can explain. And those are level of intelligence. Some people believe there's seven different level of intelligence that you can categorize, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
intuition itself requires a multitude of them, not only one type of intelligence. It requires perception, it requires, um, analytics, it required emotional level of intelligence. So, when we started breaking those things down, the idea of a singularity, right, that the AI will be able to overpower, overthink humanity, it's far fetched a little bit. And perhaps one day, but I don't think in our lifetime we still have a lot to contribute and to offer. And the idea of creativity, intuition is far beyond what perhaps AI or computer can even describe. We haven't been able to describe with over 5,000 years of philosophy. We still have difficulties to put things into words.
Exactly. But it's also, there's also what you said is our feelings cannot be translated into any AI tool.
Mhm.
And if you ask to AI to tell you how to go dressed into that specific event, and you're asking what would you wear there, the reply of the AI could be all possible options that you won't consider valid still. So it's like having someone who give you an advice which is not proven that is the reply that you're looking for.
Yes. Now, fascinating, fascinating for sure. Um, I want to talk a little bit about growing up in Rome, a little bit of background. What was it like for you? What was, a child from the 70s growing up in Italy?
Well, I was born in Rome. I spent my youth in a little city close by Rome, which is almost 50 miles from Rome, south of Rome, and it was a quite serene and relaxed existence as a teenager. At the age of 18, I moved to Rome to study,
Mhm.
and I never came back. Um, um, the experience of being in Rome in that time was for me a sort of breathing the theme of history, the theme of restoration, the theme of respect of the past, and how to fix things that belongs uh, to ages back. Uh, in fact, after 5 years of university, I decided to spend my last 2 years of masters. Sorry, I closed this.
It's okay.
Into I spent my last 2 years of masters in Sweden. I wanted to test myself into a much more cleaner atmosphere, and in fact, my poetry today is a mixture of Scandinavian organicism and Roman classicism. So it's a uh, a mixture of the two layers converging in something that is uh, my own recipe of this. Rome is a beautiful city. It can gives you a deep sense of belonging to a legacy. What I really missed at the time for me was to see a little bit beyond. The risk is in that situation to be overwhelmed by the history and not try to set your own history.
You just mentioned legacy. Do you think about your legacy? What do you hope people will remember you, not just as a designer, but as a thinker and as a person?
Well, as a thinker, as a person, I think I will be completely uh, dismissed in a way that I will be forgotten, as any of us, unfortunately. No, very few of them have the luck to be living beyond their death. I have an advantage, a big advantage, that I design objects that are made of bronze, are made of onyx. are made of wood, and these elements could definitely survive to me. And that's something that makes me feel a little bit how to say less scared by passing away, because I always think there will be some object that will be still connected to my passage into this world, and that's the only real you know.
So through your your objects and your work, your soul will remain in this world, or a part of your aura will embody this new form and live on.
Let's put it this way, it's not there are objects that takes the name of the inventor or the founder, and they will remain for quite a while. In addition to these, my objects are even made of material that in nature can possibly never be disrupted. Of course, if you take a piece of wood, you can burn it, but bronze will be a little bit more difficult. And sometimes I think in 2000 years, someone will find a piece of bronze with my stamp on it and will think that this is something that who knows what was used for, but still there will be the stamp with my name. And if they will be capable to read our alphabet, they will still read my name. And that's something that makes me feel a little bit privileged in some way.
Absolutely. Michele, before I let you go, three questions I ask everybody here on the show. I wanted you to recommend a few things for us to check it out. Okay. I need you to recommend us a book, something to read. It can be one of your favorites or something that you read recently, um, something to watch or listen, a movie, a piece of music, show, a documentary. And our next guest, who do you think we should invite next to be here on the Minded podcast?
Okay, so at the moment I'm reading a book about the story of Leo Castelli.
Mm.
It's called Leo Castelli in his circle, and it's
Yes, I read it. It's amazing.
Andy Cohen
Yes.
Solale is the writer, and
Yes.
I find quite fascinating how this little man coming from Italy, and of course there is a sense of patriotism in this, came to New York and set the rules of new contemporary art, like dealing with Rauschenberg, Jasper Jones, Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol. It was something unbelievable for a man coming from Trieste, a little village in the northern part of Italy. That's something I would recommend, not just for the knowledge of the history itself, but how can a simple, clever mind set a legacy beyond any kind of heritage or any kind of specific knowledge, but just using your mind and envisioning how things can be organized. That's something that I would recommend to read. I haven't finished yet. You have finished probably.
Yes, yes. I read a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay. What to listen or to watch? I'm not a big fan of TV.
Hmm.
I avoid TV because I think it isolate myself from reality in not the best way. I would love to sometimes to uh, take my plug out of the connection. So probably I would rather invite to listen to some good piece of blues. Not a specific. I wouldn't define any kind of specific music. I am a big fan of Clapton, and sometimes just a single piece can make me feel rebalanced in my own way. Um, what to invite? Who to invite next?
Yes.
I was thinking to your question, and I am deeply fascinated by a character that is now, setting new rules, quite close to my approach in terms of mentality, different aesthetic, but still that fascinates me quite a lot, which is uh, Rosberry, the creative director of Schiaparelli, I think is setting a new legacy of luxury in terms of sophistication, sustainability, craftsmanship, heritage, everything. I think in, Daniel Rosberry represents the quintessence of what a creative mind, a beautiful creative mind today should deal with. And I would invite you to contact him, and possibly you will have this pleasure.
We would love to. Achille, what a joy has it been to spend the last hour talking to you, learning from you, being able to get to know a little bit better your thoughts. I have a feeling that we could go on and on and on for hours. And then hopefully we get the chance to do this in person at one point, perhaps without any cameras, with a glass of wine, something more
Sure.
relaxed, and go deep on those conversations because it's quite fun to be able to entertain those ideas and with like-minded people. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Yuri, for your time, and appreciate a lot.
I
Thank
have a
you.
great day.
Bye.
All right, there we go. We're done.